But I don't think they realized James Harden was as good as he is now, right?
That's correct. To be fair, I don't know if anyone did. We put all our assets in to trade for him, but no one could anticipate he'd be the best player in the world. Like,
why did you put all your assets? Why him?
So both the eye test, because he looks amazing. I think anyone watched him, but if you looked at data at the time, once he had the ball in his hands, and it's still true to this day, and I get a lot of shit because someone asked me who's a better scorer, him or Michael Jordan, and it's just factual that James Harden is a better scorer than Michael Jordan.
Based on the math.
Based on literally, like, you give James Harden the ball, and before you're giving up the ball, how many points do you generate, which is how you should measure offense. James Harden is by far number one in NBA history, and he was number one even at the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was coming off the bench. It was a little more hidden. So you needed good data to sort of suss that out.
You may have seen this clip floating around the internet a couple months ago. This is Daryl Morey, NBA General Manager and former NBA Executive of the Year recipient, and he just said that James Harden was not only a better scorer than Michael Jordan, but the best offensive player in NBA history, even when he was in OKC. And wait, let me double check something real quick.
It's just factual that James Harden is a better scorer than Michael Jordan.
Based on...
Yep. I wasn't tripping. According to him, these statements are mathematically factual. Well, let me stop you right there, buddy, because we can do math around here. So instead of just saying you're wrong, which you are, today we are going to break down just how wrong our friend Daryl Morey is. First things first, let me say that I find James Harden to be one of the most offensively gifted players in the league. Dude is a certified baller, and he has an MVP and a scoring title to back it up. Yes, he can put the ball in the hoop at a historical rate. It's actually disgusting at times just how this guy gets it done on the offensive end. But that's exactly it. How James Harden gets his points is such a hyperbole of basketball. It's forced, it's exploitation at its finest, and it's counterintuitive more often than not. Jesse Washington from theundefeated.com wrote a great article on this exact topic, titled "James Harden is Disrespecting the Unwritten Rules of the Game." Now, I'm all for getting a bucket by any means necessary, and I'm not doubting the man's ability to score. He's made that part of his game crystal clear. But to compare him to the pantheon of NBA greats is treacherous territory, and here's why. Daryl Morey said that offense should be measured by how many points you generate before giving up the ball. So a perfect number that reflects this exact metric is points per 100 possessions. This stat adjusts each player's scoring output while also taking into account the generation and pace their team played at. And if we look at a chart that displays the top players all time in points per 100 possessions, James Harden's 2018-2019 season is first all time. Wait, out of all the players to come through the NBA, of all the buckets scored, according to Daryl Morey's definition of measuring offense, James Harden is, in fact, the best scorer in NBA history. Well, at least his 2018-19 season was the best scoring season in NBA history. So, factually, yes, James Harden is technically the greatest scorer ever. At least for a single season he was. But what if instead of looking at Harden's best season, we look at his entire career? Morey said that Harden has been the best offensive player ever since his OKC days, and he's going on 8 seasons with the Rockets where he's had free reign to do whatever he wants with the ball. So there's got to be some truth to that statement. Well, unfortunately, the extent of James Harden's offensive GOAT status ends there. Because there are 4 players in NBA history who generate more points per possession throughout their career than James Harden. In fact, one of them was his own former teammate. Not only are these 4 players ahead of Harden, there are half a dozen players right on his heels. So is Daryl Morey telling the truth when he says that James Harden is the greatest offensive player of all time? Kinda. If we are basing our assessment off of a single season, then yes. If we are talking about an entire career, which is what Morey seems to be suggesting, then no. But when Morey says that Harden generates more points per possession than any other player, maybe he's referring to all points being generated by that player, including assists. Well, under that metric, James Harden falls short of being the best offensive player of all time once again. Last season, Harden generated 54.5 points off of either scoring or assists, which is absurd. But it's not the most all time. Tiny Archibald, Wilt Chamberlain, and Russell Westbrook have all generated more points per game in a season than Harden did last year. Again, one of them being his own former teammate. But Morey not only said that Harden was the best scorer of all time, he also said that Harden was by far the best offensive player ever. Now those are two completely different concepts. Scoring is offense, but offense isn't just scoring. For instance, in the last chart that I displayed, you can see players like Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, and Chris Paul, players who rarely score over 25 points but are offensive juggernauts. Offensive production comes in many shapes and sizes, and although Harden is among the very best in league history, he is not factually or mathematically the best in that specific facet of the game. James Harden has found a way to bend the rules and manipulate on-court situations to his advantage, which in itself is a testament to his polarizing play. He's doing something that has never been done before, but that isn't necessarily a good thing. For example, take Harden's free throws. The man gets to the line like no other player in the league. I talked about this briefly in my video 8 Unbelievable Charts. If you thought Harden was getting to the line often last season, you are going to be sick when you see this. Here are 11 NBA guards with the most activity at the charity stripe this season. Free throw attempts and free throws made. For the most part, you've got two different groups. Guards who have a knack for drawing contact and getting to the line, and then all-star guards who have enough usage to constantly put up big numbers at the line each season. But then, there's James Harden. Do you see this? This should be a crime. I get it. The guy is a wizard at drawing contact. He knows his strengths and he can make even the best defensive players gamble at times, leading to unnecessary fouls. But that doesn't explain this discrepancy. If getting more foul calls was just a matter of manipulating your play style to simply draw more contact, then why hasn't any other player in the entire league come even remotely close at doing it? Another aspect of his game that James Harden has seemed to bend, twist, and use to his advantage, or at times disadvantage, is the three-point shot. When you watch Harden play, it's clear that he's pulling up from three more than any other player. But it's hard to visualize just how extreme his three-point attempts are in the midst of a game. But put your worries aside, I got a chart for that. Here are the top 11 players when it comes to three-point attempts so far this season. Why I chose 11 players instead of 10, I don't know. Beats me. But there's 11, so deal with it. Most of the top three-point shooters are floating somewhere between 50 and 60 attempts, with a few players nearing 70. And then there's James Harden sitting on his mountain of threes. But these are just attempts. A more accurate representation of Harden's productivity beyond the arc would be his made threes. Yeah, with far more attempts than anyone else in the league, Harden is somehow right in the mix with everyone else when it comes to his makes. But hey, when you're putting up nearly 37 points a game, you have the green light to shoot like this, right? Well, not really. Check this out. Effective field goal percentage is a statistic that does a great job representing how efficient a player can put points on the board. Harden, being the quote, greatest scorer of all time, should at least be floating near the top of the NBA when it comes to this stat and the league's top scorers. Well, when looking at league leaders in points per game, James Harden carries a dreadful 45% effective field goal percentage. A number so bad that at the time of recording this video, you have to work your way down to the 62nd top scorer in the league to find a player with a worse percentage. All 61 players under James Harden in points per game have a better effective field goal percentage. 61. So back to Morey's point. Is James Harden factually and mathematically a better scorer than Michael Jordan was? Well, let's see. 2 scoring titles to 10. MJ has more points, higher points per game average, but let's go a little deeper. Throughout the last 5 seasons, James Harden has posted some of the most absurd offensive numbers in NBA history. Same goes for Michael Jordan in a 5-year stretch from 1986 to 1990. For comparison, here are the numbers. And at face value, their numbers actually look pretty similar. Similar usage, same effective field goal percentage, and similar points per game relative to their shot attempts. But that is the extent of their similarities on the offensive end. Because the rest of these advanced stats give a much clearer picture as to how James Harden gets his points as opposed to how Jordan got his. Specifically, their 3-point attempts, their free throw rate, and their 3-point rate. Jordan's 34 a night came from within the offense, at the rim, while cutting through the defense, giving depth to the Bulls' offense. Only 1% of his shot attempts came from beyond the 3-point line. Meanwhile, half of James Harden's shots over the past 5 seasons have been threes. Half. He also gets to the line every other shot attempt. Add these numbers to his turnover percentage, which is about 1 in every 6 possessions, to Jordan's 1 turnover every 10 possessions, and Harden's numbers become transparent. 31.2 points per game over a 5-year stretch is among the very best in NBA history. But think for a second. What kind of numbers would Jordan have put up if he conserved his energy and shot 11 3-pointers a game instead of just 1? Imagine if 50% of Jordan's shot attempts came from downtown, and yet he still managed to get to the line every other shot. Sure, you could credit James Harden's ability to draw contact, but again, at what price? Team chemistry? Team success? Winning? What's 36 points a game if it takes 11 threes and an absurd amount of free throws to get it? Over the past few seasons, James Harden has solidified himself as one of the deadliest offensive talents in NBA history. Not the deadliest offensive talents, but one of them. In other words, Daryl Morey, you're wrong, I debunked your statement, I'm right, you're wrong, I win, you lose.